Wishing you all a very happy new year and welcome to today's webinar on promoting crowdsourced content contributions with KCS and AI. This is Sheba and I'll be your co-host for tonight. Now I'm delighted to introduce our speaker, Sally Stumbo, Senior Technical Writer at Chainguard. She has over 10 years of experience helping fast-growing engineering teams scale documentation and knowledge practices. From building Duo Security's KCS program to leading documentation initiatives at Panther Labs and Census, she now heads documentation at Chainguard, where she's launching a new KCS program and driving modern AI assisted knowledge workflows. And today, she'll be sharing insights on how AI can enhance knowledge centered service practices to reduce friction for contributors, maintain content quality, and help documentation teams scale knowledge without scaling headcount. With that, I'll hand it over to Sally. The stage is yours.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sally Stumbo. And as mentioned, I've been in tech for over 10 years, starting out in technical support, then moving over to a tech writer role and building out docs and knowledge programs at companies like Duo Security, Panther Labs, Census, and Cortex. And now I'm a brand new tech writer at Chainguard. I just started there recently. And before I get started, I also want to take a moment to say thank you to Document360 for hosting today's session. All right, so today I want to talk about an issue that I think a lot of knowledge or docs teams struggle with, and that's how to encourage meaningful, high-quality content contributions from people across your org. So whether your docs team is one person or if you have a larger team, scaling and maintaining your docs usually entails getting help, like getting crowdsourced contributions across your company. There are a lot of different ways or methods that you can use to achieve this. I've personally found a lot of success with a method known as knowledge-centered service, or KCS, which operationalizes the idea of support teams creating knowledge-based content reactively based on support tickets. Support teams have an incredible amount of product knowledge that they pick up as they work through new issues, and they deeply understand the context and the nuances that come along with those issues. So KCS not only helps you solve that issue of scalability and maintaining your docs, but it also enables a process where your most knowledgeable workers are able to explicitly document all of their implicit knowledge, so then everyone learns more. KCS is usually tailored specifically to knowledge-based content, which would be like troubleshooting articles or FAQs. But I've also used the basic principles of KCS when training teams across the org about contributing to our product docs. And of course, we can't have a tech webinar without mentioning AI. So I'm also going to talk about how you can use AI in a practical way to encourage people across your org to submit content updates and help them feel more confident about what they're writing. So most docs teams are pretty small. I've sometimes only been the only tech writer at my company, and I have a lot of tech writing peers who are often in teams of 3 or less people. So let's face it, if you're a team of 1 or even a small team, and especially if you're in a company that moves fast, you're going to be outnumbered by like a growing feature set, new edge cases that come up, customer questions, a broad range of integrations and app components, and so many other things that you need to cover with the docs. Writers do often become subject matter experts in their own right, since they test and write about every aspect of a product. However, it is usually the customer-facing teams who have the most extensive knowledge about every possible way that the product can break. And these teams, with all of their knowledge, usually they're not writing anything down. They might know that they have a lot of important information in their heads, but they don't know where to write it or how to contribute. And this can lead to a few issues. One is that the docs or KB articles can end up being inaccurate because the tech writer hasn't figured out yet that they fell out of date. And maybe the support engineers know, and maybe they just avoid those articles now. Another issue is rising support volume when customers are trying to use inaccurate docs and things aren't working. And then one more is support teams reinventing solutions. Like often what I see is they create another internal wiki page where they document things, but then knowledge goes there and dies because nobody really knows it exists. So it makes a lot of sense that support teams and customer-facing teams should be helping contribute to your content, but you need a good structure to support this. And for me, this is where KCS comes in. So in KCS, the solution is to reshape the support process in a way that includes knowledge use at every step. Support teams are searching for the knowledge, and if it's not already documented, they're writing it down. If it is documented, they share it with customers. And if they find something that's out of date, they're updating it. So it's not about turning the support team or CSMs into these perfect technical writers. It's more so about making knowledge available and up to date as quickly as you're learning about these new things during support interactions. And KCS doesn't just have to be for a knowledge base or for support team members. I also approach product docs with a KCS mindset. So the product docs, I think, are still very much a process that's owned by a tech writer or a docs team. But that aspect of asking people across the org to contribute is a really important process for helping maintain your docs in a more scalable way. And tech writers usually have their own methods in place to keep up with product changes. They might follow a release calendar or have a content audit calendar. But I like to also promote an additional layer on top of that, inspired by KCS. If anyone across the org sees something outdated or wrong in the docs, they should feel empowered to fix it. Everyone across the org should feel this collective ownership over the docs. And at a lot of tech companies, you'll have company values similar to like bias to action or being customer obsessed. And this KCS mindset really aligns well with those common values. It encourages people to take action to ensure that the customer experience is always great. But for teams who are new to this process, it can sound intimidating or like it's going to slow them down. A lot of support teams will usually say they don't have time to update content and do their regular job. So they end up staying in an old routine of answering a lot of the same questions day in and day out. And this is where AI can help. It definitely does not replace writers, but it amplifies the work that writers do, and it really lowers the barrier to entry. So AI can take those more tedious tasks like writing out a whole article, and it can give you a clean, structured first draft. There's a lot of options out there. I know most of you have at least heard of or probably used ChatGPT. And it's really easy to take a vendor like that and have your notes or your list of troubleshooting steps or even a Slack thread and turn it into something that gives you a really good starting point. There are also applications out there that can read your internal resources like wikis and past support cases and then give you answers based on that. These types of tools are really helpful for customer-facing teams. You can put in a customer's question and get back a detailed answer that helps you understand product context, workarounds that were discovered in old support cases, or even expected behavior based on your code base. So not only are these tools helpful for troubleshooting, but they usually can give you answers that are formatted well enough to be copied and pasted into a knowledge base article or into your product docs. And then one other cool thing you can do is set up a custom GPT to help with style and tone when you're using AI to write docs or KB content. That's possible with a lot of different vendors, but I've personally tested it out in ChatGPT and found some success there. So here's a quick workflow that you might use to help make it easier for people to contribute to the docs or to your KB. So first, someone comes across new information. Maybe it's a support engineer who solved a case and learned something new about the product. Two is they write out some rough notes about the issue and the resolution. They might put that into an AI vendor like ChatGPT and prompt it to turn the notes into content that's ready to be put into the docs. So for example, after pasting in their notes, the prompt might say something like, I'm writing a KB article based on this information. Make it sound good and format it to be in a KB. And also, if you're using a custom GPT, at that point, it would automatically apply whatever specific styling you want to the writing. But otherwise, you'll want to review the content, like make sure you really read through that output, make sure it sounds good and that it actually makes sense. And then copy and paste the content into your docs or KB, maybe review it again, then submit it to the tech writing team for review. Another thing that's always top of mind for tech writers is keeping content up to date. And if you're familiar with KCS, you know that part of the process is to continuously maintain your content in the moment that you use it. So what they mean by that is like, if you're solving a support case and you read a KB article, then in that moment, you should be verifying that that KB article is currently accurate. But of course, human error does come into play. Sometimes we don't catch things that need to be updated, or sometimes we're in a hurry and we just don't update it when we should. But there are some ways to do this with AI. So there are different vendors that can take in your internal resources, analyze them, and flag it when content might need an update. One specific tool I've used for that is called REGLAD. I know that there are other tools as well, but they're really helpful in just finding things that are out of date. I don't think this replaces the human aspect of doing your due diligence to make sure that content is accurate, but it can help catch the things that slip through the cracks that you didn't notice, or something that slipped by when you were just in a rush and couldn't do it in that moment. And one last important thing to focus on is the culture aspect of knowledge. Everyone at your company should feel compelled to say something when they see content that's out of date. But how do you motivate that behavior? There's a few key things that I have found that help with this. So one is to make it as easy as possible to contribute. And I'll give you an example for this. I was at a company that used a 100% docs as code process. So we were doing everything in terminal and using GitHub, had a repo for our docs. It worked really well for our engineers, but I knew that it would help if other teams had an easier way to review drafts and contribute. I realized that there were some people on the less technical teams who were having trouble reviewing drafts. So I ended up at that time switching to a docs vendor that supported both a docs as code approach and also had a UI, so people could choose their own workflow to interact with the docs. In that situation, it made it a lot easier for the people who were intimidated by the docs as code process. And we saw a big increase in unique contributors. So the main point here is to make sure that you're reducing friction in the process for the people who want to submit content. So the solution there really depends on which type of people, like what persona you have contributing. And the next thing is to encourage docs writing as a part of the development process. So if engineers are using templates for a feature development checklist, then maybe docs should appear on that checklist. An engineer or a PM should be thinking in terms of helping customers while they're working on the features. And that means they should see the value of docs and be encouraged to even write the first draft for a new feature that's coming out. But regardless, they should be thinking in terms of making sure that docs are included and that they're being worked on when these new features are coming out. And last, reward and acknowledge your contributors. So it's true that no one outside the tech writing team has to contribute. So you should do what you can to let them know that it's appreciated when they do it. And you should make them feel good about doing it. At one company I was at, I used to do a weekly content champion where I would post in Slack to acknowledge somebody who had updated the docs that week. And I would talk about the impact of their work. And then more recently, right after I launched a KCS program within a support org, I did a month-long contributor contest. So during that month, whoever wrote the most KB articles would win a cash prize. And also a quick note about that, if you're familiar with KCS, you know, it's not usually recommended to focus on quantity. So you shouldn't say like, you know, write 3 articles per quarter. In this case, I did have a quantity contest because it was a temporary focus just to help people build that new habit of writing content and really motivate them to get started in it. So to summarize, here are some steps you can take to promote a scalable crowdsourced content process. First, find a contribution process that works for you. It doesn't have to be KCS, but you might find some other method that resonates with you. Also, make sure you reduce friction in the process for anyone who you want to contribute. This might involve some training and looking at different tools to see what makes the most sense in your situation. It could be 100% docs as code, but it also might not be. It might be something else, like a specific tool that everyone just can use really well. Another one is promoting the use of AI to help people contribute more efficiently. It's a lot easier to ask somebody like, throw your notes in ChatGPT and send them over to me than it is to say, hey, write an entire article about this. People can sometimes be intimidated by the writing process. So it really helps to tell them it's okay to use AI for that first draft. And then make content writing a part of your company's culture by doing things like rewarding and acknowledging the people who update content and making docs a part of that product development checklist. All right. That is it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sally. The session was quite insightful, and I'm sure the audience will agree with me. And that's a wrap for today's session. A huge thanks to you again for walking us through the topic. I hope the insights shared today gave everyone a clearer understanding of how AI can support cases workflows and empower teams to build better knowledge faster. To everyone who tuned in, thank you for taking the time to be here. And of course, if you have more questions or want to learn more about Document 360, then feel free to reach out to us. We'll be back soon with another session. Until then, see you next time. Thank you, Sally, and thank you everyone for joining. Bye.